All right, let's do it. All right. Hello, everybody. I am your host, Chris Carr, and we will be discussing the Create model presented by Creative Muse with our special guest today. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name's Becky Krill. I'm a singer-songwriter and music producer. Um, Living in Brooklyn, New York, and been doing this creator thing now probably for 10 to 15 years. And I'm happy to be here speaking with Chris.
Awesome. Now, as a creative and having multiple ways of expressing yourself, when do you remember having that initial feeling of like wanting to create, or what memories have people told you about to where like you felt the creative drive? Where's that like earliest time in your life, even if it wasn't like organized?
Well, from a very, very like early, I was super into, drawing and coloring and the sort of visual art making. And I think that I don't know exactly when that turned into, well, maybe I can write songs as well, but I do have an early memory, probably about 7 or 8 years old, of being with my cousin on vacation with our family and just deciding I was going to write a song, like in that free space that kids get when parents are, just trying to get a
Right? You froze. Yeah.
break from the kids
Hey, Becky, you totally froze.
and like
Hold on. I don't know. I don't know.
you froze. Let me
Yeah.
try to like get on the I'm hang on one sec. Hang
Hold
on.
on. I'm also gonna close all the stuff that I have.
I'm gonna get on this Wi-Fi instead of using my phone's thing. See if that helps me on my end.
Okay, I'm gonna
Uh,
close it.
I think this ought to be better. All
And I
right.
don't know. It's possible sometimes, like after the broadcast, it kind of restitches.
Oh,
But
really?
yeah, just in case though, we should re-answer that question.
Okay. Let me just get my video back somehow. I don't know. Okay, here we go. All right. We can just, I don't know if you want to start over or,
We don't have to start over, but we can answer that question again. Like in terms of when
yeah.
when you realized like you had a creative spark, or like at what point in your life did you first start expressing your creativity?
Yeah. Um, One of the earliest memories I have is being with my cousin on vacation with our families and being kind of told to like go play in the corner kind of thing. And for whatever reason, and I don't know what the influence was that made me think that this was an activity we should do or that I cared about, but I said let's make a song to my cousin, and she just went along with it. She's a year and a half younger than me, so often I would just be like, let's do this thing, and she'd be like, cool. But yeah, I wrote a song with my cousin at our camp when I was like 7 or 8 years old with no instruments. There was no actual music. It was just words and a melody. And to this day, my cousin will remind me of this song. Like we both remember all the words to it.
Oh, wow.
And, the culmination was we'll go play in the corner and entertain ourselves. But afterwards, we have to be able to like present this thing to the adults. Do you like what we made? That kind of thing. And yeah, so I don't know why I thought song we should write a song or whatever, but it was a lot of fun, and it was even to this day a memorable little song, and is the first song I ever wrote to my knowledge. But I was probably like 7 or 8 years old and had no musical training at that point and no one telling me I should write songs or make music. It was just a natural thing that happened.
And was that then cultivated, right? Like you had this intrinsic spark, you have a creative drive. Did you then take classes in school? Did you study music or art? How does that then grow and develop over time?
Yeah, well, so I did know that, like, it was always told to me that my parents were separated when I was 1 years old. But my mom always told me that my dad was a musician, even though I didn't really know him. And that he played upright bass and cello and actually had recorded. And that was always kind of in the back of my mind. Like, my dad did this thing and my mom tells me about it, and so there's some meaning there. And I also, my mom always wanted to play guitar and never learned. And around the time, I think it was fifth grade, in my elementary school, they start to open up instruments as a thing. And I remember wanting to do drums. Like, drums seemed the most fun. And in the school band in my elementary school, which was really just like a class during the day where you would go, and um I chose the drum. And I remember my mom had to like lay away this drum, this one snare drum. It was like very expensive and we didn't have the money for it. And my mom was like on a payment plan so that I could like have this drum. And I learned how to read percussion music, so like eighth notes and 16th notes, and learned rhythm pretty, like, probably around 10 years old. I got into that, and I happened to be pretty good at it, to the point where they like sent me to the like state, like, it was at like Rhode Island College, and it was a big deal. Like, I remember going and competing against these other kids who played snare drum at like 10 years old, and like
Mhm.
having to play and perform this piece of music in front of these guys in suits in this like classroom at the college. And I did really well. And so I was like I don't know, all state like snare drummer at like 10 years old. And that was exciting. And then I went into middle school and did percussion as part of my middle school band. Um, but going into middle school, I remember, as part of percussion, like, the band, the percussion section got like zero attention in this band. Like, the band leader was a trumpet player, and he was really focused on the other instruments. And I remember just feeling like, as the younger kid in the middle school band playing percussion, I never got to do anything other than like shake some bells, or like I didn't even get to play the bass drum, or even the snare drum, because the kids in eighth grade got those seats. And there weren't that many percussionists. And so I just felt like, this is boring. And I guess I wasn't down with the like traditional band structure. It just wasn't fun for me. And so I ended up getting out of band and focusing more on athletics at that time, because I played two sports a year. And that was more fun and interesting to me at that time. But I still loved music, for sure, and went, probably, like, all of my free time I'd spend listening to music and trying to get recordings on a cassette from the actual radio of stuff that I liked. So I'd sit in my room for hours just waiting for the thing to come on so I could record it onto my cassette. And also, like, an obsession with CDs. Like, there used to be a store called Strawberries,
Yeah.
and like everyone in my family knew that I was a music lover, and so I'd get gift cards or CDs. So I really became like a true fan. And then it wasn't until like right after I graduated high school that I said, I'm going to learn how to play the guitar. And part of, I think, why I wanted to learn that instrument was because my mother had always wanted to play guitar. And at the time that she went and laid away my snare drum back when I was in fifth grade, my mom also got herself a guitar. And so she was sort of like, I'm going to learn this thing while my daughter's doing this thing. And she actually never learned. It was the kind of thing where the guitar kind of just sat in the house until she decided to sell it back or whatever. And I think part of the reason why I picked up that instrument was because I felt my mom wanted to learn the thing and never could, or didn't have the time or ability. And so let me learn this thing. And also, I love music. And so I can play songs. And so yeah, I use the internet, YouTube, and things like that to teach myself how to play the guitar.
And how long ago, like, then would you say you started playing guitar?
So 16, probably like 17 years ago at this point.
And in that process, so in taking yourself through some kind of structured or formal musical education, and then also utilizing the internet. So people out there also keep in mind, be resourceful. You've now developed into producing multi-genre. You've worked with live bands. You still play as a singer-songwriter. You still write your own material. Um, what has surprised you most about your own growth or evolution as an artist?
Um, I think it's I think it's probably something along the lines of I just every step of the way, like the earlier parts of my journey were very explorer, like all about exploration and interest and curiosity more than anything. Like it was like I have time on my hands. So when I was younger, I had time. And what am I going to do with that time? And what surprised me most now, saying 17 years after learning how to or deciding to learn how to play this instrument, is the constant evolution of what it means to do this thing that and why it's so important and how it changes. It's just like the big picture of it is the thing. Like I it means something different to me today than it did 5 years ago, than it did 10 years ago. And that's something I never thought could be true. Like I just thought this is fun and I'm curious about it. And now it's taken on new meanings.
Could you give me an example of like, and you don't have to go too deep into it, but of a meaning you take from it now and how that differs from maybe 10 years ago?
Yeah. Um 10 years ago, I thought this thing's fun and I can carve out a little time for it. And now I feel it's a lifeline and it is something I need to do, and something, and it's political to do it now. It wasn't political to learn or to be curious about it, but now to assert like this is who I am, this is what I do, this is the only thing that actually like in terms of like a passion or a purpose in life, this is like the only thing that really has a full bodied meaning to me. And that's different than what it used to be.
Yeah, and in having that much experience and watching yourself grow and develop, I do want to kind of bring up one of the themes in our create model, which is the R sometimes stands for, which is resilience. How do you stay dedicated to yourself? Like, I don't want to say dedicated to the art or dedicated to the business or success, but like, how do you continue to persevere in making a life of music or creativity?
Every stinking day, every day, there are I experience resistance. And the older I get, the more resistance I get, and the more seriously I take it, the more resistance I get. And it's a daily resistance, just like on time constraints, time to actually do the thing. Um, and and just like an inner resilience of like fighting against a society that like doesn't value what I do, and where most people don't do what I do and therefore don't understand maybe what that deeper meaning might be, and why people who do what I do can't fathom a life not doing it. That is a daily struggle. And you have to, the resilience is like, it's a self-love thing, really. It's a like, I'm alive like everybody else and I love a thing, and I can do this even though everyone's telling me either I can't or I shouldn't.
Can you speak a little bit about that in the sense of, I remember my friends are in like medical school or something like that, and folks are like, "Oh, what are you doing?" It's like, I can't go anywhere. I have to study for this test. People are like, "Oh yeah, please go study." Then, talking to my friends, they're like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm at the studio." They're like, "Yo, come do this." And it's like, I can't. I'm working. They're like, "What do you mean? That's not work." And I don't know if that extends outside of hip hop or out of my friend circle or my particular circumstance. Do you think there is an element of you having to fortify yourself to just establish legitimacy as an artist, and that being a real thing to do?
Yeah. Yeah, like the idea that creative work is not work or not validated as work or not seen as work is so prevalent. Like I think people it can be a hobby, right? But just because it's a hobby doesn't mean that there's not labor involved, and it doesn't require the same exact mindset and focus and attitude as any other kind of work. It's work, it's production, it's thinking, it is work, it is labor. And especially like amateurs or people who aren't yet deemed professional, whatever professional means, like um that is something that irks me, and that like even at this point of doing it for so long and also having recorded for so long and invested money, I'm like, no, like this is work. And even though when you love something so much and it gives you so much joy and people see that, they think you're just doing some fun thing that's like your fun side thing or your fun thing. They don't, they're like, you're not working when you're at the studio for 6 hours, you're doing the fun thing that you like to do. And it's like, yes, and it's work. And that's the beauty. Like that is the best work you can do. Because when you're doing that kind of work, it's you're not working a day in your life, but you are. Like it's work, and it's work you love. And that's, I think, what everybody's striving to do is work on things they love.
Yeah, and that kind of brings up this concept of art being placed into a market or being exchanged for money, and our kind of society that's where money occupies a lot of space of material world need, as well as then how people look at artists. Like if you haven't been seen on a certain magazine or on a certain platform, or uh deeming to have like monetary success, like what people take from that. So how do you remember or stay true to yourself with all the economic pressures in our society?
That's a big question because we're all like doing this dance of like, who are we separate from the whole? Are we even separate? Are we, what are our responsibilities and duties to the collective and the community and the society? And um, do I actually believe that I'm contributing through this art to the collective? And um, it's a lot of thinking. It's a lot of reflection, and um, I don't always feel like it. Like I don't always feel like I'm necessarily being true to myself. And the older I get, the closer I get to feeling like I am. But um, it's really hard because the systems that we operate in have conditioned us all to these rules of engagement, which are, I think, at least for me, like I'm coming to see that the rules of engagement are just completely flawed and don't serve humanity and hurt us and hurt our environments and hurt everything. And the more I can like research and understand systems that we operate in, the more I can set myself outside of that system and say, I am not this system. I am something else. And I'm a human being who never asked to be born. And as part of that, um, I am I am allowed I'm allowed to explore as a basis. Like I don't have to subscribe to anything that I've been conditioned to, basically. And so believing that in my heart that I'm like a sovereign human being who can live my life the way that I want to, and just like drilling that into my own head all the time is really the thing. And learning about systems and really pushing myself to make art that like resists the systems as well, because I feel that that is how I am serving society through my art, is I'm trying to highlight problems that I see, and I'm trying to like just speak my truth, because I all of us have one. And a lot of times it's just these elites that get the platform, and are able to be audible about it. And I think it's important to use any platform I have to chip away at like at these conditions, you know?
Yeah, and how do you remain, and I'm not saying there's one way to do this, but what are some tools you've been able to implement, or what are some things you found that are beneficial for you to not burn out? Because when we're pushing against the status quo, or when we're drawing attention to things that other people either have value in or have become accustomed to experiencing, and you're trying to shine the light on it, sometimes it makes people uncomfortable, and they try to tell you you need to be quiet, or they try to tell you if you don't change what you're saying, we're not going to give you outlets or platforms. How do you stay motivated, stay excited, not get burnt out when putting so much of yourself into your art?
Great question. I mean, I'm actively like on the other side of a burnout right now, like a recent burnout, like a physical, mental, like the whole thing. And so it's a great question for me right now. But like I don't have a great answer for it because I'm like actively in the process of navigating that. How do I now move forward after a burnout? So when I moved to New York City, I was really excited to sort of like enter like the tech workforce in the city and like see how far I could like go with that. And was excited about all the things I could learn. And after 10 years of being in that rat race and working really hard and learning a lot at the same time, like I'm not regretful of the time I spent um, busting my butt for other people. But it burnt me out sitting at a computer for 8 hours a day staring at a screen. We're not designed for that, and we never were, and we won't be ever. And that is how we're expected to work as knowledge workers these days, working with technology. um, I just, after a physical breakdown where like my appendix ruptured and I ended up with like complications of it and ended up having to have like two additional surgeries like after that, like in order to get back to a place of health. It took that for me to really reflect on how I got there and the conditions that led to that. And now I'm like, how do I absolutely positively not put myself in that situation again? What needs to change? How do I balance this? So these are all the questions that I'm grappling with now. And now I have a baby as well. So that's just like an added labor onto everything else that is now needing to be balanced alongside my creativity and, livelihood so that I can pay my bills and keep electricity on and feed my baby and stuff. But I tend to think that for me, it's a recognition and a coming to understand that like I actually don't require much in terms of money or in terms of resources or in terms of these kinds of things. And it's a dialing back. It's a making things simpler, making things easier, less complex, so that emotionally and mentally I'm not like spending time like being anxious or worrying. Like how can I dial everything back so that it's simple?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, in terms of that kind of level of simplicity, and in a way like juggling the amount of things we do. When folks say, "Oh, you make art, you're living a dream," I think I get what they're saying. But in terms of now, there's a plan, there's actual real life grounding and rooting. When do you think for you things went more from an idea, a dream, quote unquote fantasy into, like you said, more of a practice of every day, this is what I do, or at least think about or put some time or effort into?
Um, I mean, the moment that I like stepped into a studio environment and collaborated with others and just like entered a flow state of collaboratively, not just individually, which is what I'd been doing up until the point of like entering the studio and recording and deciding to like put out music. That process, that flow state is like addictive. That flow state is a place that I decided I'm my best self. Um, it's not even like performing. because to me, performing, you can enter a flow state performing, and certainly like an improv situation might be even more what I'm talking about. But it's that space of like I've blocked off time to like explore and enter a flow state, and knowing that that like makes me a better person and it makes me calmer, and it feeds me. Like it feeds me. I'd rather do that than like binge some show. I'd
Right.
rather do that than eat some delicious food. Like there's so like I'd rather do enter that state than do anything, drugs, whatever. Like that state, that place is to me like what living is really.
Yeah. And do you remember like when was that? When was your first experience like going in the studio and collaborating with people?
2018, for getting into the studio and recording.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be about the time that started for me.
All right. So I want to thank you for coming on. We're about to wrap up. Before we depart, I do want to ask a question, and you can feel free to answer in whatever way. And it's not like obviously like a singular answer to things like this, but what would you say to a young woman who is, like 13 or 14, getting into music, and they wind up in a scenario to where maybe their band isn't supportive the way they could be, or their school doesn't have a program, how to remain curious or resilient in that early stage of like seeking art or seeking music?
Yeah. Um, I mean, the times have changed so much since I was that age. So any advice I'd give now is like different than what someone would have given me. So it's like a hard thing to answer, but um use the internet, like use the internet, go deep into the parts of the process of the creative process that you care about. You can start writing songs now. You don't have to wait for someone to be like some sort of gatekeeper to tell you that you're good enough to be allowed to do this. The tools are such now that gatekeepers are not necessary, and you can literally like make something out of nothing with the internet. And you can go grab beats off YouTube, or you can whatever. Just don't not do it because you think someone has to tell you that you're allowed to, or that you think that someone needs to like decide you're valuable or talented enough to actually do this thing that will bring you a lot of joy. If you're curious about it right now and you're 13 and you haven't had an opportunity to really start, or like it if you're curious, it will bring you joy, and you don't have to wait for anybody to tell you that you're allowed to do it, and you can start right now.
Word. Thank you. For people that like to hear your music or learn more about you, do you have a website or a way for people to find that?
Yeah, you can visit my website. It's Becky Krill, KRILL.com. You can also find my music on streaming sites and for download on Bandcamp. Yeah, that's it.
Awesome. And I think maybe next time we'll bring you on to specifically talk about music and commerce. Ooh. But we'll get to that.
Great. Well, thanks for having me, Chris, and I'm happy to talk to you anytime, anywhere. So keep asking me.
All right. Well, thank you and enjoy your day. See you soon. Enjoy the wilderness of Maine.
Enjoy the wildlife. See ya.
All right.